Ambassador Zethkar's mandibles clicked in barely concealed amusement as he examined the human delegation's equipment through his multispectral analyzers. The crude metal and silicon constructs looked positively archaic compared to the crystalline, quantum processors and bio-neural networks that powered proper galactic civilization. These computers, the Velthari ambassador said, his voice carrying the universal translator's diplomatic tone while his pheromone sacs released the chemical, equivalent of a snicker. They still use electricity flowing through metal wires. Captain Sarah Chen maintained her diplomatic smile, despite the wave of condescending laughter that rippled through the Grand Assembly of the Galactic Confederation. Around them, representatives from 47 star systems observed from floating platforms, their advanced technology humming with barely audible energy signatures that made Earth's delegation look like children playing with stone tools. "That's correct, Ambassador," Chen replied evenly. "We find our methods reliable." The Kethmori delegate, a crystalline being whose body resonated with harmonic frequencies, chimed in with what could only be described as electronic mockery. "Do you still burn chemical fuel to propel your vessels? How delightfully primitive." More laughter echoed through the vast chamber. Chen's jaw tightened slightly, but she maintained her composure. Behind her, Dr. Marcus Webb adjusted his thick-rimmed glasses and hunched slightly over his battered laptop, a machine that would have been considered cutting-edge on Earth 50 years ago, but here looked like a museum piece. "Honored delegates," announced the presiding chancellor, a towering Zyphrian whose bioluminescent tendrils pulsed with authority. "We have convened to address the human petition for technological exchange partnerships. However, given the significant gap in advancement levels, perhaps alternative arrangements would be more appropriate." Zethkar's compound eyes glittered. "Indeed, perhaps we could establish a cultural preserve. Somewhere the humans can continue their quaint practices without interfering with actual civilization." The insult hit its mark, but Chen had expected worse. Earth's first contact protocols had prepared them for galactic condescension. What they hadn't prepared for was what happened next. Dr. Webb looked up from his laptop, his tired eyes meeting Chen's for just a moment. She gave him the slightest nod. It was time. "Honored delegates," Chen said, her voice cutting through the ambient chatter. "Before you make your final decision, we'd like to demonstrate something." The Chancellor's tendrils dimmed with mild curiosity. "Very well, though we hardly expect—" The words died as every piece of advanced technology in the chamber began to behave strangely. The Velthari's quantum processors started cycling through impossible calculations. The Kethmori delegate's harmonic resonance shifted into frequencies that shouldn't exist. Bio-neural networks across the assembly began reporting sensory data from locations light years away. "What are you doing?" Zethkar demanded, his earlier amusement replaced by alarm. Webb's fingers flew across his ancient keyboard, lines of code scrolling across a screen that looked laughably primitive compared to the holographic display surrounding them. But as he worked, reality itself seemed to respond. "You see?" Chen explained calmly as the chamber erupted in confused chatter. "While you've been perfecting your technology, we've been doing something different. We've been understanding it." The Zyphrian Chancellor's bioluminescence flared with confusion and growing concern. "This is impossible. Your equipment lacks the capability to interface with our systems." "You're right," Webb said without looking up from his screen. "Our equipment is primitive, but it's also universal. Every advanced civilization eventually abstracts their technology so far from its foundations that they forget the fundamental principles. You use quantum entanglement without understanding quantum mechanics. You manipulate gravity without grasping space-time geometry." As he spoke, the gravitational fields in the chamber began to fluctuate subtly. Delegates found themselves rising slightly from their platforms before settling back down. "But we never stopped learning the basics," Chen continued. "While you built bio-neural networks, we studied how neurons actually fire. While you created quantum computers, we mastered the underlying mathematics. Your technology is advanced. Yes, but it's built on principles we wrote the textbooks for. The demonstration reached its crescendo as Webb's primitive laptop somehow began coordinating the actions of technology throughout the chamber. Navigation systems plotted courses to impossible coordinates. Communication arrays transmitted messages across dimensional barriers. Weapon systems, thankfully powered down for the diplomatic meeting, ran targeting solutions on objects that didn't exist in normal space. "Stop this," the Chancellor commanded, but his voice carried more awe than authority. "We're not controlling your technology," Webb explained, finally looking up from his screen. "We're talking to it, directly, in the mathematical language that underlies all technology no matter how advanced. Your quantum processors think in our binary. Your bioneural networks fire according to principles we discovered centuries ago. Your gravity manipulators follow equations we derived with pencil and paper." The chamber fell silent except for the increasingly erratic humming of malfunctioning advanced systems. Chen stepped forward. "You call our technology obsolete, but you've forgotten that obsolete doesn't mean wrong. A hammer is obsolete compared to a molecular assembler, but sometimes you need to drive a nail. Our primitive understanding gives us access to the foundation of all technology, including yours." "The offer stands," she continued as Webb shut down his laptop and the chamber's systems gradually returned to normal. "Technological exchange partnerships will share our foundational knowledge, our obsolete understanding of the principles your technology runs on. In return, you share your advanced applications." The silence stretched for long moments. Finally, the Chancellor's tendrils pulsed with something that might have been respect. "Perhaps," he said slowly, "we have misjudged what constitutes advancement." Zethkar's mandibles had stopped clicking entirely. How did you make our quantum processors calculate faster than quantum mechanics allows?" Webb smiled and patted his ancient laptop. "We asked them nicely, in a language they actually understand." As the Grand Assembly dissolved into urgent whispered discussions about the implications of what they'd witnessed, Chen allowed herself a small smile. Earth might use obsolete technology, but sometimes the old ways were the best ways, especially when everyone else had forgotten why they worked in the first place. The galaxy had laughed at Earth's primitive computers and chemical rockets. They weren't laughing anymore.